A new IS hostage video, but this time without murder. The captive is British press photographer John Cantley, held for 2 years. Under duress, he says the truth about IS has been twisted and manipulated.
I've heard the reports of another video being released on social media. These videos can be very distressing for the families of the individuals involved.
Also tonight, Scotland votes, and we're just hours away from the verdict on independence.
A convicted Latvian murderer confirmed as a suspect in the search for Alice Gross.
An elderly woman dies in an ambulance queue outside a Welsh hospital. Her family demand an explanation.
And is the home of golf about to end centuries of discrimination against women players?
This is ITV News at 6:30 with Alistair Stewart and Charlene White.
Good evening. In a major change in tack, Islamic State have released a video not featuring the murder of a hostage, but using one as a propaganda mouthpiece. British photographer John Cantley says his life is at risk, that he's been abandoned and he has nothing to lose.
Calmly and deliberately, but under duress, he claims media distortions about IS and condemns the US and UK for not talking to the extremist group. He says his message is to ordinary people and that more clips will be released. In Juliet Bremner's report, we've chosen not to play the video, but to report its contents.
This is the latest video from Islamic State, the third to show a British hostage.
Hello, my name is John Cantley. I'm a British journalist who used to work for some of the bigger newspapers and magazines.
Talking against a black background to keep his location hidden, he says he's a prisoner and his life may be under threat. He appears to be reading from a script. There's no mention of Alan Henning, the taxi driver from Eccles, whose life has been threatened by the militants in a previous video release. His fate is unknown.
I've heard the reports of another video being released on social media. I have nothing to add on the situation of the hostages. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to support them and their families, but you wouldn't expect me to give a running commentary.
Brutality has been the hallmark of the previous videos. They've all shown the victims in orange jumpsuits. They've all been threatened and killed by a masked man. John Cantley, here on the right, was travelling with American journalist John Foley when they were captured in November 2012. Mr. Foley was murdered. So far, Mr. Cantley has been spared.
I think they're engaging in strategic communications, as we call it, with Western governments and with Muslim youth in the Western countries. They are acting as an organisation that has a strategy, and that means that they are an actor that can be influenced, and they calibrate what they do with what we do. Therefore, it's a campaign. It's not merely mindless murderers who kill anybody they can find.
This is the second time Mr. Cantley has been taken hostage in Syria. Despite being injured during a failed escape bid, he chose to return a few months later.
We were moved at gunpoint with weapons loaded, with the safeties off, down into another larger tent where there were 2 Syrian prisoners. We were handcuffed to them. We were then blindfolded and we were told that we should prepare to meet our maker. And at that point, we decided this isn't going so well.
At St Bride's, the journalist church in London, tonight candles are burning both for those who've lost their lives and those now under threat.
Juliet, what in your view is the propaganda message IS are trying to get out with this John Cantley message?
Well, it's interesting. He doesn't actually have a gun held to his head, although he does refer to that, and he is clearly under pressure. These are the words of Islamic State. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And what he warns about is that Britain is trying to drag its people, their words, into another war in the Middle East. And he says if that happens, it would be unwinnable. Again, their words. And he also talks of other European hostages, hostages we know that have been released, people like the French and Spanish journalists. And I think the clear implication there is that money was paid to release them. And he says that if Britain were prepared to get into negotiations with Islamic State, then he and other hostages like him, including Americans, could also be released.
Juliet, thank you.
Well, our political correspondent Romilly Weeks is in Downing Street for us. Romilly, we heard from Philip Hammond earlier, but what impact will this new video have on the government's policy on IS?
Well, probably not a great deal, not because the video isn't shocking, not because it's not hugely distressing to learn that another British man is being held hostage by Islamic State, but that won't be a surprise to the government. They already knew that John Cantley was in the hands of IS, just as they knew about David Haines and Alan Henning. They had requested a news blackout on that information in order that their value to the kidnappers was not increased. So although now there'll be intense scrutiny of this video and everybody will be looking at why it breaks the pattern established by the other videos, it won't do much to change government policy because that is already travelling in one direction, and that is towards supporting American military action in some form or other. Next week, the Prime Minister heads to the UN General Assembly in New York. There, he will be aiming to rally support for as broad a coalition as possible.
Thank you, Romilly.
Tonight could be the last of the United Kingdom's 307 years. Throughout the day, millions of people from Shetland to Galloway have been voting on ballot papers containing 6 words of huge significance. Should Scotland be an independent country? Our Scotland correspondent Debbie Edward now on a day of destiny.
We are now open for business.
After today, Scotland's future will become clear. Edinburgh at the heart of what is a momentous day in British political history. The Scottish people today deciding on whether or not they want to leave the United Kingdom. From one man and his dog in the Highlands to families in the borders, voters have been streaming through the doors of polling stations in every village, town and city centre from 7 o'clock this morning. It's a day Alex Salmond has waited for his whole political life. Scotland's First Minister arriving at his Aberdeenshire polling station with 2 first-time voters. Alistair Darling received cheers and jeers as he came to cast his vote in Edinburgh. The leader of the Better Together campaign asked if he would have a last-minute change of heart.
Last-minute change of heart, Mr. Darling?
I don't think so, was his response. More than 4.2 million people have registered to vote. That's 97% of the electorate. They'll cast their ballot paper at 5,579 polling stations around the country until 10 o'clock tonight. The votes from Scotland's 32 local authority areas and 800,000 postal votes will be counted overnight. The result expected in the morning.
In terms of scale, we've got more people registering to vote than ever before. We've got more postal voters than ever before. And of course, we've got 16 and 17-year-olds voting for the first time. So that's added to the sheer scale of the exercise we're delivering.
Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown described the turnout as an amazing thing as he arrived to vote in Fife. SNP Deputy Leader Nicola Sturgeon was among those in Glasgow who voted within minutes of the polling station opening. Decision Day has arrived in Scotland, and in a matter of hours on this stage, the one-word verdict of the Scottish people will be read out. Well, there's a growing sense of excitement and anticipation here in Ingliston. The tables behind me poised for the ballot boxes, which will start arriving here just after 10 o'clock tonight. And this is that screen where the totals from each of Scotland's 32 local authorities will be added up to give us that referendum result. Scotland's people now watching and waiting to find out which way, which future they voted for.
Debbie, thank you.
Police hunting for missing schoolgirl Alice Gross now say a Latvian builder who has also gone missing is an official suspect. Arnes Zalkauns was seen on CCTV cycling along the same towpath in West London where Alice went missing 3 weeks ago. Today it emerged he's a convicted murderer in his home country. Paul Davis reports.
In the Ealing district of West London, police searching for a missing schoolgirl. They're digging up the garden of a man who's also disappeared from his home. A man with a record of violence. Arnes Zalkauns, who came to London from Latvia, was convicted of murder in his homeland. He's also been questioned about a sexual assault in West London. Today, police who've been looking for 14-year-old Alice Gross for almost 3 weeks now named the Latvian as a suspect. CCTV footage put him and Alice together that day. Alice left her home in Hanwell around 1 p.m. and was caught on CCTV by the railway station shortly afterwards. At 3:45, Alice was captured again, walking alone at Brentford Lock. Just 15 minutes later, police believe Arnis Zalkans on a mountain bike crossed the same bridge. Half an hour later, cameras captured Alice again for the last time, heading back in the direction of her home. 5 days later, Alice's rucksack was found on the canal towpath. Detectives say it's almost certain she came into contact with the Latvian builder.
It is highly likely that they came into contact, whether that be by passing or we don't simply know. So the focus of our investigation in respect of Alice is what happened at that moment in time. I need the public's help in that. That area is not covered by CCTV. I need the public's help in that.
This afternoon, forensic officers were continuing their search of Arnis Zalkan's apartment. Several bulky items were taken away for more detailed examination. At this stage, police say it remains a missing persons inquiry. Arnis Zalkans was last seen here on September the 3rd. That is 6 days after Alice Gross went missing. In their search of his home, the police have found his mobile phone. They've also found his passport. They say he's probably still in the country and they're offering a £20,000 reward for information, though bearing in mind his past record, they're warning members of the public not to approach him.
Thank you, Paul.
Police in Thailand investigating the murders of 2 British tourists have admitted their investigation has stalled after DNA results ruled out all of their earlier suspects.
Hannah Witheridge and David Miller were killed on the island of Koh Tao on Monday. Today, Hannah's family arrived in Bangkok to meet the investigators. Neil Connery has the latest.
The parents and sister of Hannah Witheridge have now arrived in Thailand to meet with police officials. Their grief at the loss they've suffered all too clear to see. David Miller and Hannah Witheridge were found dead on a beach on the island of Koh Tao on Monday. British embassy officials say they're doing all they can to support Hannah's family.
The family are deeply distressed at this time, and my role is to support them at this very, very difficult time. And obtaining information directly and very helpfully from the police has been good for them, and they are very distressed by what they're seeing in the media.
Thai police say they're struggling to find the killers of the 2 British tourists after it emerged crime scene DNA didn't match that of their possible suspects. Christopher Webb, seen here, and his brother James, both from Jersey, were questioned, but police say there's no evidence against them. Officers had said there was strong evidence against 6 Burmese suspects, but now say there are no DNA matches. We're trying to look for witnesses, the police chief admits, but the scene where the incident took place is far away and dark. We've not had any witnesses, but have secondary evidence that helps our investigation. Thai police have made a number of new arrests of Burmese workers as their investigation continues, but 4 days on from the double murder, and it appears they're still no nearer solving this shocking crime. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Still to come. Treated worse than an animal, a family's claim after their relative died waiting for treatment outside a hospital.
And time for change at the Royal and Ancient with an historic vote on women golfers at St Andrews. That result and more after this break.
Welcome back. An investigation's underway tonight after a woman died waiting in a queue of 12 ambulances outside a hospital in South Wales last night. Sonia Powell was outside the Morriston Hospital in Swansea for more than half an hour. Tonight, her daughters claim she was treated worse than an animal. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn reports from Swansea.
Sonia Powell's family would like to have remembered her death as a peaceful moment, during which they gathered as one around her bedside. Instead, they are scarred by treatment that began with what they believe was a highly questionable decision to transfer her from Neath Port Talbot Hospital and ended in the undignified setting of an overcrowded ambulance car park in Swansea.
All the daughters just could not, and my dad could not be by my mother's side in the last moments. It's absolutely disgusting, the way that my mother was treated. You know, you wouldn't treat an animal like that. It's pure neglect.
Today it was relatively calm, but at its peak yesterday, 12 ambulances were parked up outside the emergency department in Swansea. The hospital say they were well staffed, but Sonia Powell's family are unconvinced.
When I was there, it was the last 3 to 4 minutes of her life that the doctor actually came into the ambulance. And I had to shout at him and say she'd gone. And then he spun round and started examining her. She'd already gone.
One union official today told me it's normal for ambulances here to face delays offloading patients. It's yet another criticism of a National Health Service in Wales that has just been described by the British Medical Association as facing, quote, imminent meltdown. The health board that run this hospital accept that at peak times ambulance handovers can take longer than they would like, but they say that in recent months there has been a significant improvement. Now, in terms of the specific care for Sonia Powell, they say they are reviewing all aspects of her treatment here, and that in discussions with the family they have offered them their most sincere condolences.
Thank you, Rupert.
ITV News has learned a single family has been caught up in 2 of this year's darkest tragedies. The Al-Bakas from Gaza lost 4 boys when they were killed by an Israeli airstrike as they played on a beach near their home. Now the same family is waiting for news of 27 other relatives thought to be on board a boat that sank off the coast of Malta last week. Our Middle East correspondent Geraint Vincent has been to meet those left behind.
In the ruins of Gaza, some people's homes have been laid open to yet another kind of tragedy. Families here are waiting for news of loved ones now lost at sea after a boat sank in the Mediterranean last week. Ahed Bakr told me that 27 of his relatives are missing, husbands, wives and their children. Ahed is already grief-stricken. In one of the most dreadful incidents of the latest war in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike killed 4 young boys as they played on a beach. His son Zachariah was one of them. Why us, he asks. What has our family done? A handful of survivors were rescued from the sea. They said that after an argument with the passengers, the smugglers who they'd paid to take them across the Mediterranean sank the boat deliberately. One estimate here has it that as many as 400 of the 500 drowned were Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. For them, the perilous journey out of this place was a risk worth taking. But for the loved ones they left behind, suffering has been piled upon suffering. Some of them are still hoping their relatives might be found. Others have started to mourn.
They decided to leave this place, and decided to die, can say, because of all, the conditions we are living here after 51 days of bombing,
Whether or not to try to escape this place is a dilemma more and more Gazans grapple with. But for the Al-Bakas, death still stalks them, whether they stay or go. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Gaza.
The jury in the trial of DJ Dave Lee Travis retired today to consider its verdict. He's accused of indecently assaulting 2 women and sexually assaulting a third during the 1990s, but denies all charges.
Now, the Duchess of Cambridge has been forced to cancel a solo trip to Malta this weekend because she is still suffering from severe morning sickness. Prince William will now take her place. The couple announced they were expecting their 2nd child earlier this month.
And finally, a second historic vote has taken place in Scotland today on an issue that's divided the country for generations. But unlike the referendum, the result was never in doubt.
Members of the Royal and Ancient Golf Club in St Andrews are to allow women to become members for the first time in its 260-year history. As our sports correspondent Ian Payne explains, even the world's top players accept the time has come to change.
They were out in force in Cheshire today, women playing golf. Hardly news, because golf for these ladies is their life.
I joined in 93, I think, and unfortunately my husband died in 94. And it was just like I had this extended family all of a sudden, because everybody just surrounded me and helped me through it all.
It's reckoned that 75% of St Andrews' 2,400 male members voted in the postal ballot, guided in part by the advice of the boss earlier this year.
We're seeing changes, aren't we? Changes in society, changes in sport, changes in golf in particular. And I do think that best governance practice in the modern era is a compelling case for change.
And there was a similar endorsement today from golf's current boss on the course.
I mean, I don't even think there should be a debate. Of course, women should be allowed to join the RNA if they want to or become members. I think it's been a long time coming, and it's definitely well overdue. And you know, I'm sure they'll make the right decision in the end.
Which leaves 3 other major golf clubs with no female members. They are Muirfield, who are due to review things within weeks, Royal St George's in Kent, who are considering changes, and Royal Troon, who have no plans to change things, but do say the local ladies-only club can use the course. How long will it be before they all see the light? Ian Payne, ITV News.
And that is it for now, but you can follow all of the drama of the Scottish referendum from the moment the polls close. There'll be results, reactions and analysis on our website, itv.com/news from 10 p.m. Then, if you live in Scotland, join STV for the news at 10. And for everyone else, we'll have the latest on the ITV News at 10, live from Edinburgh.
Those programmes will be followed by Scotland Decides, STV's coverage of the vote counts through the night. Then Good Morning Britain begins at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. At around the same time, the final result is expected. But from all of us here for now, goodbye.
Bye-bye.